Good evening, everybody. I'm Anna. I manage the Create Centre, which is held at the University of Sydney. And I do that on behalf of Robin Ewing and Michael Anderson, who are our co-directors and founders of the Create Centre. And of course, also on behalf of all of you, because our role is to facilitate everyone's ability to find ways to get creativity into every aspect of their life and to support the research that helps us all do that better. And so to that end, I'm absolutely delighted to have a guest coming in from London for us today. But before I tell you a bit about Philip and hand over to him for the presentation, of course, I do need to acknowledge first that we are, although, yes, Philip is coming from London, well, from Brixton specifically.
Mm-hmm.
We hosting here are doing so on Aboriginal land. I personally right now am reaching you from Gadigal land, which was unceded up to this point. So I must acknowledge and express gratitude to the elders past and present who are continuing to cherish and look after this land, which is the land of the oldest storytellers in the world, which is perfect for this evening's event. And my chance now to introduce to you Philip J. Morris, who is the founder and artistic director of Trybe House Theatre. Now, Trybe House is a new and fresh theatre company that really sprang up a few years ago in response to a very specific observation of a very particular need. And their mission is to equip young Black men to thrive in creative spaces and give them the resources to take that ability and energy and voice into the whole of their lives. So they work with young Black men to build resilience and well-being. And in particular, they are experts in understanding. I think we're going to find Philip is an expert in understanding the need for specialized outreach, where you need to know who you're working for and how to speak with them to support their voice and their well-being. So that's probably all they need to hear from me. Philip, welcome and thank you. And I'll just hand over to you now.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Over on your side, it's the morning over here. I'm really excited to be speaking with you all about community-led practice. For those who will also be watching this online later on, hello as well. My name is Philip J. Morris, and I am the artistic director of Trybe House Theatre. So we're gonna dive in straight into the presentation and talk about the company's origins, why it was created, and how we have grown from strength to strength throughout the years. So we're going to talk about community-led theatre. In this session, we will explore the importance of specialized outreach, the fundamental tools needed to make impactful work for the community. In this session, we'll also unpack Trybe House Theatre's creation in 2020 and its rising trajectory over the last 4 years and discoveries that have been made along the way. So we'll start with the name. So this is our logo, and we'll start with the reason why this is called Trybe and why we've used the spelling, which we often get asked as to why it's T-R-Y-B-E. So just based on, beginning with the title, Trybe is about commonality and celebrating that, and celebrating difference. And we felt that as a team, and I'll go into who the staff members are, we felt that the term tribe in wider Western culture and references that are made in the documentaries or books that have existed in the past can often look at tribes as a very dangerous thing, or something that's really unknown or potentially threatening based on some of the experiences that we've had and observations that we've seen. So we wanted to redefine the meaning of the word tribe, and it actually just means nothing more than understanding and connection. We are a company that works specifically with young Black men, and I'll go into why, focusing on improving mental health, well-being, resilience through theatre, using theatre as a tool to help support self-expression. We work with 18 to 25-year-olds based on some studies, which I'll go into. But I think a thing that's really important to remember are the kind of threads that connect us as human beings. So as a phrase I always like to say is, you know, within this space, within this forum now, all of us to some extent, I would like to think, are interested in theatre or are interested in the arts, which would make us our own tribe in itself. I'm sure if we were to be in a room together, we could speak for hours about theatre and what theatre means to us and what the arts means to us, in the same breath that if anybody here was a massive Harry Potter fan, I'm sure if we were to lumber some fans together in one room as well, there'll be stories to share, connections to share, and that's all that that is. It's just sort of highlighting that we can see each other, recognize each other, celebrate each other, and share stories. So to go into it more specifically, we are a company that provides a service working directly with young Black men between the ages of, it was 16 to 25, but we've made an adjustment now recently to 18 to 25, based on some very specific studies. The company seeks to actively build resilience and self-well-being in young Black men using theatre as a supportive outlet. So this is the creative team. We have myself, I'm the artistic director. So what that means is in terms of the delivery of workshops, the forward thinking of programming, being able to strategize, brokering partnerships with the theatres that we work with, all of that kind of stuff is something that I take care of. We have Shanubi Ruth Bailey to my left in the picture, who's our creative producer. And together we also work really hard on the yearly programming. We also do a lot of workshop planning together, and she's in charge of all of the operations that happen externally as well as internally in the company. And then we have Stefan to my right, Stefan Livingston. He's got a really interesting and important role called a well-being lead. So how that operates is on a session-by-session basis. He is present in the room, and he is there to help humanize, break down mental health, and actually make it a really accessible thing for the young men to understand. For clarity, he's not there as to be a therapist. He's actually just there to help contextualize anything that might come up. So how our sessions often work is we'll be in a room together, we'll talk about some topics, we'll explore it through theatre, and actually Stefan's really great in finding a language to best explain some mental health complexities, but also give the guys in the room a sense of a direction as to where to go if they're ever in need. He also works on a one-to-one basis. So the members in Trybe are able to call him whenever they're in need of support or help, and he's able to assist them. So it's a really unique role, I would say, and consistent role that we feel really proud of having. And then we also have an associate director more recently called David Gilbert, who also sort of doubles up with me in terms of our workshop delivery and plans. So to zoom into the why, I think it's a completely understandable question in terms of why is Trybe so specific? Why is it only young Black men that we primarily work with? We do work with other groups, which I'll get into a bit later, but these are some facts and figures and statistics that are the reason as to why we exist. So this is based on studies in more recent years, which is available on .gov.uk. It's quite a commonly known website for sort of facts and figures and all types of different things, whether judicial or mental health. But this is these figures are in relation to white male compatriots. So Black men are 10 times more likely to experience complex mental health problems, such as psychosis. To sort of zoom into what psychosis means, my understanding, and there are different understandings of what psychosis is, but it can become a sort of warped perception of reality that can develop over time. And this can result into, people not feeling like their actual environment is real, that they are displaced. For example, if right now I'm located in Brixton, if I was to all of a sudden think that I might be in Greece, and people around me are not the same people that I expect them to be. These are some of the kind of extreme sort of cases that can exist. So it can be a sort of warped perception of reality. And so young black men are 10 times more likely, which is a really scary statistic. I think, especially considering in terms of our makeup in this country, in the UK, there's actually we're actually a very small minority in numbers. So to be 10 times more likely is very alarming. Another reason is black men are 4 times more likely to be detained under the Mental Health Act, and this is statistics taken from 2019. Again, available on the same link. And to be detained under the Mental Health Act is to essentially, in terms of a replacement of being, let's say, arrested, it's to be taken into a mental health institution, to be assessed by clinical workers, and then to be diagnosed and potentially given prescriptions of medicine, but also remain as a resident in a mental health home. So we'll go into it a little bit more, but one of the big challenges that we're facing in the UK is another form of, I'd say, epidemic regarding mental health of young black men who are being detained under the Mental Health Act, but are not necessarily seeking for help beforehand. So there are many cases where young black men are being detained, but in terms of when they are experiencing challenges, they are not going to. We have a famous charity called Mind Charity, we have a place called Centre of Mental Health. But where there's a gap in the access of being able to walk into a building and say, I'm experiencing some concerning things, can you help me? It's often when it's in brackets too late, when young black men are detained and taken away. So this is where we exist. And we're going to looking back at its history, but this is where we exist because for clarity, we are not therapists, we are not trained therapists. We just aim to create a safe space for young black men to express themselves artistically, and also to be able to understand mental health better. So if ever they're experiencing some challenges, they know exactly where to go, they know exactly who to talk to, and they know exactly where to turn. So our aim is to bridge the gap so that those statistics can hopefully change. And this actually is a figure about how many black men access mental health, as opposed to when it's, again, we use the phrase too late, but we just mean in terms of being detained. There's never a moment of being too late in terms of seeking mental health support. So this is just to dive into a bit of the history, which sort of helps sort of back up, support some of the work that we do. So this is from a report from a project called Up My Street, which I actually took part in many years ago, where we worked closely with the Centre of Mental Health. And this is before Trybe existed. This was another project I worked on with. And so I'm just going to read a bit of a quote that comes from the report. Again, these reports are all accessible online. I also have links if anybody after this chat wants to read through anything. But it says, men from African Caribbean communities in the UK have far higher levels of diagnosed severe mental health illnesses than other communities. While national surveys provide limited, reliable information, rates of schizophrenia diagnosis of under the detention of the Mental Health Act and the treatment in restrictive settings are disproportionately high compared to white peers. Yet at the age of 11, black boys do not have a poorer mental health than others of their age. Our aim is to try and understand the reasons for the apparent deterioration in young men's mental health during teenage and adult years through our service. Young black men growing up in the UK are more likely to face multiple and significant risk factors, such as poor mental health, including the stresses of living in poverty, house insecurity, homelessness, difficulties at home, at school, and subsequent reduced access opportunities. So for clarity, one thing that's important to say is that this is not to disregard other ethnicities that also have severe mental health issues and illnesses. Is just to highlight that a really small minority have such high rates. It's really important to say. So this is just and it even says so that, you know, in terms of finding reliable further information to be able to even capture it, I suppose that it highlights the need for this kind of work, because it should be really easy to access the numbers and statistics to kind of just know where there's disparities and so forth. The reality of the young men that we work with, we've made some bullet points on. These are only things that they have told us, as opposed to us making any assumptions on the lifestyle that they've lived. So some of the issues that young men that we have worked with have faced are employment issues, stereotyping, institutional racism, stop and search issues that's created a distrust with the police in some cases, families that might be less empathetic to mental health, failed qualifications or exclusion from educational spaces. So some have experienced employment issues based on a range of all types of different reasons. Some being, you know, they found it challenging to, you know, address issues with someone who might be, you know, their manager, and they've had issues in terms of some of them knowing how to make a CV because they haven't received that support during school to be able to apply for jobs. Stereotyping is something generally that a lot of the young men that we work with have faced. We work with young Black men from all corners of London as well, who come from all types of different backgrounds, who all dress differently and within their own ways. And sometimes that creates some, you know, the reality is that in inner city London, that can sometimes create some tensions because there could be assumptions before they're able to kind of speak about who they are. Sometimes there are some prejudgments made. And I would say I've had the same thing as well. In terms of institutional racism, now that's a much bigger and wider thing, which I think is not necessarily just a challenge in the world, but I think it can be a challenge in art spaces as well, in terms of how when we're dealing with seeing other representatives that are not fulfilling certain roles or are not being placed in positions, even for better words. Often in some art spaces that they've come across, there have been no other people that look like them, or the only people that have looked like them have only worked in the cleaning department, as opposed to being someone who's in charge of this department or that, or being a manager or being in marketing. So these are some of the things that they have faced, and I think the nation has faced for a long time, the world has faced. So stop and search issues, I'm going to dig into that a little bit deeper as we go throughout this presentation, because I think that creates a huge challenge in terms of mental health and being able to confidently walk into a space after potentially just being searched a couple of minutes or hours before. Families being less empathetic. So quite a few of the young Black men we work with, their families are coming from quite religious backgrounds who can often, where mental health can often be seen as a taboo thing, depending on which sort of religious background they might be coming from. So they've echoed that sometimes their families have ignored speaking about mental health, challenging mental health, you know, being able to openly be confident to be able to talk about it. Fill qualifications and exclusion in educational spaces. So we have quite a few, it's really fascinating. We have quite a few guys who were kicked out of school or kicked out of drama school, which is really, really interesting, based on the interactions that we have with them. I think based on what they've expressed in the past, there's been sometimes a lack of patience or more grace offered to other students as opposed to them. So these are things that the young men have said to us themselves, but I just wanted to highlight and name a few of those things. So there's a reference here which I think might help us sort of zoom in and talk a little bit about the stop and search side of things. Maybe the case over in Sydney too, but in the UK, we have a really high percentage of young black men that are stopped and searched. And this is just a reference taken from a really good book called Natives by a writer and artist named Akala. And he says this, you see, racialized stop and search is not really about fighting crime. The effectiveness of random stop and search as a policing tactic in general is ambiguous at best. Also, to believe that a 14-year-old who has left his house with the intention of killing another human being, or who thinks so little of his own life that he will kill over nonsense, is going to be deterred by the potential threat of stop and search, reveals a worryingly shallow understanding of human psychology. What racialized stop and search is about, in London at least, is letting young black boys and men know their place in British society. So this is a reference from a book. And I find this quote very interesting. And I'm going to talk about some of the experiences that the young men have had. And my hope is sort of to see if there's any commonality or thread between mental health and some of the experiences that they're having. So we asked a few of our members whether they'd been stopped and searched, and I just grabbed a few anonymous quotes from them. One of our members said, I don't know how many times in the past few years, but I'd say between 6 to 10. We asked them how it made them feel. It made me feel annoyed, powerless, and of course, humiliating. Because many times have been for silly reasons, such as walking too fast. And even when questioned, I've answered honestly, they think I'm lying. For example, on another occasion, they asked me for my name. I told them and they didn't believe me. Imagine. But yeah, it's very annoying. So it's really interesting here how this young man is able to actually say, I think it's been between 6 to 10. It could easily be more, but that's a pretty high figure considering he's roughly around 23 years old. He mentions it being humiliating, and I think this is where it gets really interesting. So he said, many times it's been for silly reasons such as walking too fast. Now, I've wondered if this is where sometimes the challenges of mental health can come in. Because if any of us here, if our train is to run late, we're going to walk fast. If we're running late for work, we're likely to walk fast. But if this is going to be a challenge for one of our young men, if walking fast is to now create a triggering emotion, is to create worry and fear, that presents an argument in terms of what could start to develop in terms of a bit of a deterioration of mental health. Could you be worried to leave your house? Could you be worried to run? Could you be worried to make any sudden movements? So this is just something I found it really interesting. And then I think, again, the person's name. I won't disclose their name, but I'll use my name. My name is a very, very British English name. My name's Philip. And if an officer wasn't to believe me, what could that create for someone like me in terms of paranoia and feeling a real sense of distrust and not being heard or listened to or believed? This person is, for clarity, is not someone who's ever been affiliated in a gang before. He's someone who's really passionate about acting and is a really good performer. And I think, just a last sort of sentence where he said, yeah, but it's just very annoying. I mean, these are really abnormal circumstances to be faced with. And it's really interesting that, this person kind of almost shooed it away. Like as if it wasn't a big deal, but actually we feel that it is a big deal. So it's just really interesting. This is a book. Now, this is just to tie in. I think this is really helpful to talk about, just to highlight myself a little bit more. I promise you this presentation gets much more cheerier as we go on, but it's really important for us to present why we exist, like why we're so passionate, why the why. But this book was written by a really famous actor called David Harewood, who is someone who's also sectioned under the Mental Health Act many moons ago now, actually. But he wrote a book called Maybe I Don't Belong Here, a memoir of race identity. um, oh, sorry, just trying to race identity and a breakdown and recovery. So he says, Black people suffer poor mental health as a result of the grind of surviving in a space that seems to act against you, undermining you, pushing you aside, sometimes unconsciously making you feel as if you're living in a different reality. Rather than listening to what Black people have to say, they are shouted down, their experience is denied, and it becomes too exhausting to address the ignorance. This may be the most open and tolerant country, but tolerance isn't enough when it comes to racism. People need to call it out, or at the very least, acknowledge its existence, or we will be speaking with a completely separate set of facts. Being challenged on the existence of racism is tiresome, psychologically debilitating, and deeply depressing. I'm not surprised that so many of us break down living here in the UK. So I think it's just really, the thing that I'm really drawn to from this quote is where he says, undermining you, pushing you aside, sometimes unconsciously, making you feel as if you're living in a different reality. And I suppose that's really interesting in relation to psychosis, where some people, in some cases, some people can have a warped perception of what reality is. But this quote is directly linked to how sometimes, and he's another Black man, sometimes that people, I'd say, are sometimes made to feel. This is not to say that all by any means, but I just found it a very interesting parallel. And actually it being really tiresome to talk about racism, being really tiresome to explain, it being depressing to explain. So yeah, I just find those links really interesting in terms of some of the things that the guys have told us at Trybe House, the reality that they're facing, the things that they're facing before they reach the workshop space and the rehearsal room is really fascinating. So that is to cover all of the reason as to why we exist. There is such a high demand for the work that we do. And we, just to give a bit of the genealogy, we started in 2020. And it was, we actually started directly a few weeks after the killing of George Floyd. And this was a response to just make space for young Black men to exist, to be able to play, to celebrate, discover themselves artistically, but also if they don't want to become an artist, that's also fine. It's just a place to explore. So here we'll get to the slightly more joyful side of what we do. So this is just a fraction of some of the young men that we work with. We have up to 40 members at Trybe House Theatre, which is amazing, coming from all corners of London. Some who came in and have never acted in their life, some who have always dreamed of being actors. And I think what's really important for us is to have them all in the same space, to be able to acknowledge each other, to break down any stigma, to assume that if you are performing on the main stage of whichever theatre that you're doing really mentally well, but actually those challenges are just could come in the same way as not being employed. So this is just a fraction of the group, but we have 40 consistent members. We have 30 men in the waiting list waiting to sort of make their way in. So it's really amazing. After starting only in 2020 when lockdown was sort of on and off and on and off, and only being publicly facing in 2021, for us to have such a rich sense of a collective. So this is just a few faces. This is interesting to me. I just want to touch on this actually. So this is just a bit of data to show that Black men are massively underrepresented when it comes to teaching. Now, we are not teachers. Me and Stefan are not teachers, and David, we're not teachers. But in terms of the work we do, I just want to kind of just highlight a few tiny things here. So these are recent statistics taken from Black Men Teach, and it is that 85.8% of male teachers and 85.7% of female teachers are white and British. 3.5% of the teachers in the UK are male and are male from Black ethnic groups. So 3.5 is really, really small. Black teacher trainees are 21% less likely to be accepted. 96.5% of teachers in Britain are white British. 1% of head teachers in Britain are Black British. 1.6% of deputies and assistant heads in Britain are Black. And I think it's just this is just interesting, just in terms of representation and where and aspiration. And actually, whilst obviously there are I was fortunate enough to have the most amazing sort of drama teacher during school, and that's wonderful. It's really important for the young men to also see people who look like them being able to deliver the work too. So that's where it's been really interesting for when they've come in for the first time and they've seen me and I'm wearing trainers and a t-shirt and jeans, and there's a sort of familiar thread or a common thread, and they see Stefan, who's also a trainee. He's a trainee doctor whilst also being a wellbeing lead, and to see a Black male working in a clinical space and a sort of health institution is some encounters they've not experienced before. So I just wanted to highlight that. And these statistics, it's not to bash anyone, it's just to actually just show that this is kind of the reality in terms of role models and who they're able to look to and aspire to and all these kind of things. But very interesting that this is education. So the principles of what we do, and I think one of the main takeaways in terms of making community-led practice is whatever company you're going to create and focus on and work with is to have your fundamental principles. So we're going to go into art. So what we do is we provide a culturally and psychologically informed space. What does that mean? It means a bit of what I just said, in that they walk into the space and they see myself, they see Shanubi Ruth Bailey, they see David Gilbert, and they see Stefan Livingston, and they go, oh my gosh, I didn't, my name's Philip Morris, so until you see my face, you're not going to know what ethnicity I come from or my background. But it's been a surprise when they've gone, oh wow, oh, it's also run by a young Black company altogether, which is sometimes a unique experience for them. And I think in terms of like psychologically informing, where Stefan has such a rich knowledge of Stefan has, so I missed quite a bit of background information with Stefan. So Stefan used to work for a company called CAMS, which is a children and mental health services. He's worked with really vulnerable teenagers and children that are facing all types of different mental health challenges and life challenges. And so what's so good is whenever we have a session and there is some vulnerability that comes into the room, Stefan is able to help contextualize what the feeling is, what it might mean. He also offers techniques, coping mechanisms. We do a lot of grounding techniques, which is really great in terms of it's sort of leaning towards a sense of meditation, but not, I wouldn't say it's like a deep level of meditation, but some tools that can be really useful to calm anxiety, to be able to soothe any stresses or challenges, but also the important side of having a directory. So he has, given some of our members numbers to contact, through therapy that's existed, if in need, as well as offering his own one-to-one session. We introduce theatrical skills with long-term benefits. Some of the things that we promote in our sessions is playing, actually being able to be free, to be able to play drama games, to be able to run around and make noise without fear of judgment or fear of being reprimanded or told to be quiet. So the kind of games that you would do with a company of actors, the kind of games that you would do with a youth theatre, we do the same things. And it's really fascinating to see some of these guys are humongous. They're like 6 foot plus, they walk in, and actually the moment we pull out a ball and we begin to play, they almost become like kids again. Which is really important in terms of just building a sense of fun, building a sense of camaraderie, and actually confidence, which is the next point that we raised. We really want to promote confidence when being able to step into a public buildings, when being able to talk, public speaking as well, being able to speak about your experiences or being able to speak about a topic. Building resilience and encouraging teamwork is a massive thing. So we make it really clear. We are not a drama school. We're not saying that we're going to make stars out of anyone here. We are just here to have fun, to be able to talk and express ourselves. The aim is also to create artistic work that is reflective of their reality, the community and the theatre industry. So a lot of the work that we make is based on experiences, and for clarity, it's not all doom and gloom. It's not that we necessarily talk about mental health. It's just that there are some topics that might refer to mental health when we're speaking about ourselves. Our aim is, what we do is we have a series of workshops, which often leads to the creation of a sharing in which we invite the community down, we invite theatre industry down to just watch our stories together and to be able to sort of integrate that too. We also aim to provide pathways into the life of theatre and all of its works. So that might mean that, when we're aware of auditions coming up, we might, send some of them to pursue that. There are also loads of we really firmly believe in new writing, and I've done a lot of work with theatres and writing. So when there are writing courses, when there are first aid courses, where there are facilitation courses, what we acknowledge, which is fun, is obviously the performative aspect, but we're actually more interested about them understanding the life of theatre, the kind of different jobs that exist in theatre buildings, as opposed to just being a performer. So we have been able to support them in having work placements, working in marketing. We've been able to give them work placements working in the education department, working closely with development and understanding fundraising. So that they understand the breadth of what theatre is. It's not just a performative thing. It's actually something where we're hoping that they actually find an interest in other fields that may take place in arts spaces and buildings. And lastly, support the young Black men gain a further understanding of mental health. So I think we've spoken about this quite a few times, but being able to humanize it and in sometimes the language and the sort of the clinical jargon can be hard to understand. And actually what Stefan's brilliant at doing is breaking it down and making it really digestible so that we can further understand health and mental health together. Great. We only ask for 3 things in return. So those are the things that are our guarantee as fundamentals. And I think when creating a community-led group, whoever you're going to work with, it is important to also ask for things in terms of when you are working on partnerships or to stand by some principles. So we ask for 3 things whenever we're approached by a theatre who want to work with us. We ask for 3 things. One is a warm welcome when working in an art space by all members of staff. It can be, and I find it even myself, after all these years of directing, it can be really intimidating sometimes to walk into an art space where you've never been there before. You may be one of the only people who look like you in that space. And so actually we encourage all staff members from stage door to the artistic director or CEO of a building to just say hi, to actually just come down, greet the men that we brought into the space, to be able to just really feel welcomed is so important, because sometimes they've expressed that the outside world cannot feel so welcoming at times. It was really important that we create a safe space when we approach art spaces. A sincere interest in the betterment of the young men that we work with. So we are really aware of what we represent. We are really aware of the kind of social currency that we have in terms of, if we're to bring 40 Black men into an art space, we're aware that makes the theatre look good, makes it look like they're really engaging, and to be really frank, but we're actually more interested in what can some of these spaces provide? What services can they provide? How can they support these guys long term? Our part of the bargain is going, yeah, we'll bring them to your show and that's all good, but actually what's the investment that can help support these guys? Again, that connects to work placements, work experience, shadowing, being able to understand. access to extended opportunities and a chance to meet people who can give insight into their career path. So what we do in every building, we are always asking for people to just come in and say hi. I think it's really important when we're doing a workshop that we're able to meet people in all types of different departments who can explain what they do, and for the guys to understand the sort of different functions that happen in art spaces. We've had the pleasure of having artistic directors come down, or someone who works in the literary department come down, or someone who works in finance come down, just so that they can again be introduced to the life of theatre. So we only ask for those three things. And we those are the only things that we just, the young men that we work with are at the absolute heart of everything we do, and all that we care is about is their betterment and their support throughout their mental health journey. So yes, so this just to talk about a bit of inspiration. This was a show called Barbershop Chronicles, which was about some Black men from across different corners of West Africa, and beyond. Actually, I think it's South Africa and East Africa. And this was a play that took place quite a couple of years ago, before our conception of the idea. And it was just to show that it, just in terms of source of inspiration, that actually when people can see themselves on stage, it can just really help them develop a further understanding and create visibility. So yeah, this is one of my favorite plays called Barbershop Chronicles. I just thought I'd show that. And very interestingly, I think this is what echoes the importance of having a safe space. So the writer of that show said this, which I just found very, very interesting. Forgive me for my pronunciation of epidemiologists. So he says, I was dating someone who was an epidemiologist. And she talked to me about a counseling project for barbers to teach them ways of spotting mental health issues while they were cutting hair. The organization she was involved with wanted to offer mental health advice there and then, and there was no other Black mental health projects out there. This was a way of exploring the issue in a safe space and barbershops. For Black British men, it's a safe and sacred space where they can go to relax, escape racism, freely talk with no fear of being stopped, questioned, or moved on by the police, which is a common experience in the outside world. So it's really fascinating that this is the writer of this play, who wrote a play about Black men, not just young, being in one space, being able to share their stories, being able to talk. And actually, it's sort of, I would say, Black British folklore that the barbershop is like a space just where you can get a haircut whilst also just talking about life and actually get advice and all these kind of things. So I would say Trybe House isn't too different from a barbershop. It's just a local space for young Black men to come to be able to play, explore, and discover. So this is just just going to show some images. This is an image of a piece that we created at the National Theatre, who's one of our partners, called Swim. And this was created in response to Homer's Odyssey. So it was really fascinating to talk to young Black men and introduce a story that they had never heard of. I love Greek mythology. And for them to really draw on some of their experiences from a story that has existed pretty much as long as time. So I'm going to show a video to give you a sense of the kind of work we do. I'm hoping you'll be able to hear it. If you can't hear it, please, Anna, do let me know and I can find a way to project audio. But this is just a bit of a sense, and you may not, I'll paraphrase what they're saying by the end of it. It's only a minute long. I'll paraphrase what they're saying, but you can get a sense of the kind of energy that we put behind our work. So this is them responding to their connection to the Odyssey.
They try to take missives and then everyone goes to boom, 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 boom. But The change is that the gods, instead of inciting it, the god comes down and says, "Sure."
And having to grow up and like learn to be a man by himself is like so relevant today with so many young black
But it's
men.
funny because when you think about the start, the king started this war because they took my man's girl. And he said no. By the end, he was like, "No, I'll fight you for my man's girl." So it's so interesting. So remember,
You have to think about it, nice and fast. Right. You don't come back from a 20-year journey, 10 years war, and then your 10-year journey of actually warring to get home. You're not going to be right. Something's going to
When you were speaking about, I guess, the gods almost orchestrating this whole thing, for me, it reminded me a lot of how in this country right now, it seems like politicians are kind of doing what's in like their best interest or the best interest of like the elite.
So this is kind of a bit of a sense of what we do. We're very physical. We like to just kind of plunge ourselves into it. But just to kind of highlight some of the things that they mentioned. So they were able to make connections in terms of, if you're familiar with Greek mythology, Odysseus is on his way home for a really long time. I think it's like 20 plus years to get back after fighting in the Trojan War. And he basically leaves a son behind. And it's really fascinating because of some of the relationships that some of our members have with their fathers. Some are estranged, some are in their life, some have, there are different challenges that are faced. But they were able to identify some of the imagined challenges that Odysseus would have faced in meeting his father again. And so we looked at some scenes of what happens if Telemachus and Odysseus meet each other and actually Telemachus doesn't know who he is, and how might that conversation go. And some of these guys are almost having the same lived experience as those things. And so that birth conversations about fatherhood and abandonment and duty and all of these kind of things. And there were quite a few quotes there about they were able to liken the gods, the ancient gods, almost being like politicians in this country, making decisions, changing policies, changing laws, which affected the war. And also they were I think most importantly, they were able to kind of conceptualize or think about Odysseus's mental health journey, and actually how challenging that is to be taken away from your home, or where home now means for you. So it was just really beautiful to see, these guys who had no understanding or connection to the Odyssey, story as old as the Odyssey, make these very personable connections to the story. And so we, as well as them talking and we kind of responded, we also bring in source material for them to just kind of understand stories and the importance of telling story, and understanding ancient stories and why stories are passed over from generation to generation, and what lessons are we supposed to learn from them, and all sorts of things like that. So just before we talk about a bit of the teacher work that we do, and we'll round off soon for some questions if there's any. Some of the partnerships that we have that are really precious to us. So our first partner was the Royal Court Theatre. That's where we began. And we began that partnership in, I can't believe it was 20, officially in 2021. That was where we held our first ever session. We got to stage door not knowing who was going to show up, who was going to turn up. And long and behold, 20 young black men were at the door just waiting to go in. They'd never been to that theatre before, but they were just keen to sort of get involved. I'm sure there'll be a question along the way as to how do we recruit people. So I'll save that for them. We also have a partnership at the National Theatre, which is what this clip is a part of. We were part of an amazing program called NT Public Acts, which involves different community groups from across London that culminate in a performance in it taking place in the Olivier Theatre stage. Last year was the Odyssey. That was our big play to focus on, and Trybe House were selected as one of those groups. So now that the production was unbelievable, was heartwarming, and I'll show you some images from it. And now that the production's done, we now have a new partnership with the National Theatre, where we use their space once a month. We're going to be hosting gala events there as well, where we're able to meet hopefully future patrons and people who can help support the work that we do. And our more recent partnership. We have a partnership with the National Youth Theatre. We brought up to 25 men from Trybe to the National Youth Theatre, who were able to have we were able to have our own showcase, and they are now members of the National Youth Theatre, which is amazing. And we also recruited some members from Trybe from the National Youth Theatre. So it felt like a really pure and really a really lovely exchange of being able to bring our members into the wider spectrum of what theatre is, and be able to connect and work with other young people too. Great. So so this is just we do work with teachers as well, which is really great. So there's a few workshops that we deliver. One is building trust with students, and that is looking at the challenges that you might face when working with teachers, and working with students more so. The tools and techniques that we use as a company, and also things like grounding and those kind of things. We offer a few packages to teachers. So we have one called Building Trust. We have one called Amplifying Voices. We work with. It's really amazing that whilst we have a very primary focus, we work with all types of groups that feel that our work is useful. So we deliver teachers workshops. We've delivered at national conferences, teachers conferences. We also work with other youth groups. So if ever there is a youth company, and it doesn't have to be made up of only Black men, whatever gender young people identify as, we work externally with companies too who really enjoy our ethos of working. So we were invited last year to Poland to deliver our Building Trust with Students workshops. What was fascinating about them contacting us is that they have loads of international students that they work with who live away from home. Some students being from Ukraine, some being from Malaysia, some being from all corners, and they really wonderfully found value in some of our person-centered approaches when working at Trybe House. We work really hard at Trybe at celebrating every individual, being able to mark special events that may happen culturally within all the factions of their lives. So these are just a few images of that. This was our National Teachers Conference. We've delivered this workshop 2 years in a row, working with teachers from all corners. One of those teachers were the ones that invited us to Poland. Another teacher, there's a school in Walthamstow, towards North London, and they invited us to their college to also do a one-off workshop too. So just to show you a few images that sort of give you I guess a wider sense. You can see there's so many of them, which is amazing. The image where you've got one of them wearing a Lakers jersey is a workshop that took place at the National Theatre. That was our project as part of National Theatre Public Acts. If you look to the very top right corner where my mouse is sort of hovering, all of these men were members that we brought to the National Youth Theatre and became members. So became a part of 250 young people that come to the National Youth Theatre. These are all dedicated members now that we were able to bring. To the bottom corner, these are, so it may or may not be known to some, but there's a school called the Brit School, more famously known for Adele, used to be a student there. These two guys used to go to the Brit School and actually had a very, I'm sure they wouldn't mind me saying, had a very challenging time there for different reasons. But wonderfully, we worked on a project focusing with working with some of their year 10s, so they're sort of 15, 14-year-olds who were finding studies quite challenging. We actually so these are two members from Trybe, we brought them back to deliver and facilitate workshops for them, and it went really successfully. And it was really wonderful for them to go back to school and to be able to lead and to be able to operate as mentors to the young men that we worked with there. We also host, one thing that we feel really passionate about is, I think I mentioned it earlier, but like role models, them being able to see and work with very successful artists, friends of ours who who can give insights into their mental health journey, can give insights into their creative journey, to where my mouse is kind of hovering. This is a really well-known poet, successful award-winning poet called Yomi Sode, who'll be invited down to host a workshop. To the top right corner, this is an amazing actor called Cobner Holderbrook-Smith, who's featured in many films and musicals, is an Olivier Award-winning actor as well, who also came in to talk about his life. And then also to the bottom corner, we have an amazing movement practitioner called Kenrick Sandy, another Olivier Award-winning choreographer who also led a session working with them too. So it's not just about the acting, it's about the poetry, it's about the movement, it's about them seeing mentors and role models who have also been on a journey, and really kindly they've offered their services for free because they're close friends who just really care about the cause. And here are just some final images. So the production I spoke to you about at the National Theatre, which took place in the Olivier stage, which is the National Theatre's main house theatre. This is a dream come true. We had one of our guys played Hermes in the Odyssey. To the top right corner, it's one of our members called Braulio who played Zeus, who also grew up around the corner from the National Theatre his whole life. So never would have imagined that at some stage he'd be able to embark on this epic journey. And then one of our guys in the corner who played Achilles. And so in terms of where you can find us, and I've said a lot of things, we've had a lot of chat in terms of sort of the mental health side. It was just really important to echo and explain as to why we're responding to a cause. And though there are there are really fun things that have come from it, it's all because there is a need. There's a need for these guys to be in a space where they can express, talk, build camaraderie, know that they're not alone in this journey, make friends, be able to sort of improve their own confidence, being able to publicly speak, being able to walk into a theatre space and feel that they belong. This whole company's existence is about looking after them, but also the thing I always say to them, it's about also trying to integrate them into society so that they can feel confident to hold their own. They're not always going to be in spaces that are predominantly Black male. They're not always going to be in spaces that are predominantly Black, and that's okay, because that's what life is. But it's important to be able to be in any space and feel confident within yourself. So thank you for listening. I know it's a lot of jargon there, but I'm open to any questions at all, and I'll be really transparent.
Thank you, Philip. That was incredible. Thank you for giving us so much material to take away. I wish I could have seen your Odyssey.
Yeah, me too. It's so cool, man. What you're doing is so cool.
Thanks
Natasha, would you like to jump in with a question? You look ready to go there.
I'm just thinking, Thomas, of who we like. Have you met any? I'm sure your dance card is so full, Philip, but in Australia, the Sydney Theatre Company, I'm just seeing an ATYP, like, if they could recreate a similar model here, it would be amazing. And there's so much, like, Black theatre making talent here, and just having that kind of home and that, I think the mental health, what do you call it, like foundation is so powerful.
There's a lot of similar needs that would map onto.
Yeah, and then it'd just be so cool to connect you with that scene rather than.
Yeah, definitely. We would definitely, we would absolutely be open to we want to everyone and make other partnerships that can exist overseas. Absolutely. I mean, we're in really exciting conversations with some schools in Singapore as well. Like, we're really interested in where our practice feels useful, or where we're able to kind of exchange our kind of skills. We're keen to learn as well. So yeah, we'll definitely be further chats.
Philip, over the years that you've been doing this, how have you seen the kind of impact of your work change or develop? Like, And is it where you expected it to be when you started out?
Yeah, to be honest, it's exceeded our expectations really quickly. And so we've to kind of speak about I guess we'll speak about the people first. So we our aim was just to create a space to support through a particular period of time that was challenging. I guess what we didn't expect was how many people want to be a part of it. So we've had, young performers who are doing really well in film, who have actually been asking if they can be in the room and just be a part of Trybe as a company. And I think it's really helped to remind us that actually success doesn't necessarily mean anything if your mental health is deteriorating or if you don't feel like you belong in spaces. So that's been a real learning curve. And I suppose we've learned a lot along the way in terms of not being afraid of being really honest with our partners and with what we expect and with what we're hopeful of. And I think before we may have sort of been, because we were so new, we were so fresh, and we're still fresh in comparison to other companies that have existed for a long time. We feel really clear on what our vision is. And it's always about the guys being at the epicenter of everything we do.
Yeah,
And
the
so
vision is so strong and so smart. Like sorry to talk over you, but that's what's just, yeah, it's a really clear vision and it's really powerful. The work, you can feel the kind of joy and the healing just in the imagery and the video footage that you send.
It's really interesting because now it feels like we're in another new phase of the making of the work. So now actually there's feeling like a demand to show what we've discovered. We have quite a few writers now, really talented writers, and now we're trying to champion them to be able to commit to writing plays. We want to be able to commission them to do that. Whereas we thought it might have been a workshop-based thing, but actually now it feels like we're working towards outputs of inviting everyone from the community to watch
Could
what
I
we do.
possibly jump in there then and ask a question that kind of links the output side to the community side you started with? I was very interested right at the beginning when you mentioned one of the challenges your people sometimes face is that they have families who don't speak openly about mental health or don't want to hear them express their struggles in those terms. But if there's one thing a family will always do, it's show up to see their kid do a show.
Yes.
So I was wondering, have you seen any kind of benefits in that space for the men you work with?
Definitely. Yeah, we've had what's great is at a push, I think you named it there really. They have always come to the performances, no matter what. So I think some of the parents have no idea what they're going to on a Monday night. But actually in the performance, it's helped make sense of where they're going and why. And I've been engaged in really, really beautiful conversations with parents after who said, I had no idea my son was involved in this. I had no idea he was, amongst, yes, being so talented, but I had no idea that he felt this way, or I had no idea that this is a space where he has friends, or this is the only space he goes to in the week. Yeah, there've been some, I've had parents whose jaws have hit the floor when coming to our sharing and just had no idea, and also see their sons differently, know that their sons are making an effort, as well as trying to find employment and trying to work. But we have I think we have a really positive relationship with parents, and as new members come in, we'll kind of have to rebuild theirs again.
Thank you. Is that?
I've just also dropped our email address in if anyone does.
Oh, lovely, in the chat when you
Yeah.
need it, people.
Philip, one sort of final question. What are some of the upcoming projects or performances that you're most looking forward to?
Yeah, so we've got some really exciting stuff coming. We have there's a project that we are working on with the National Theatre at the moment. which has come from the Odyssey, actually. So from the Odyssey project, we had a sharing in which we created a piece called Swim, and it was made of kind of multiple sections, but one of the sections was a really good scene written by one of our members. And actually what we've done is actually we've said there's a show there. There's actually a show from this scene. So what we're doing is supporting him now to complete and write the play. So hopefully my hope is within the next 2 years, we'll see what that play is. We've been writing a show as a company called How Deep Is Your Love, which is about exploring what love means to these guys and the kind of different realms, and whether it's platonic, romantic, like some of their encounters and experiences. So we've been developing that in the National Theatre as well. So we have a few of those productions sort of teetering away in the background. And also we are, I'm sure they wouldn't mind me saying, but we are making tweaks to our partnership with the Royal Court Theatre. So finding a way that we can support writing even more as a pathway. So yeah, some really, really exciting things coming up. We've kind of had a bit of a hiatus, and we're just kind of in planning mode at the moment, making sure that we are ready to accept new members as well, because there's a massive demand for our work, but we're a really small team. So we're working towards longer term funding that can help sustain us, because I direct, hence me being next door. Stefan is a medical student and heading towards his final years. Shanibi Ruth Bailey also works full time whilst also being a producer. So we give a lot of our time and want to make this a full time experience and opportunity.
Well, it sounds like your energy is really going into producing some new writing here, which is very exciting. I wonder, can you envision that writing could be taken elsewhere in the world? Like, are you going to end up with plays that could be
definitely? Yeah, we feel so passionate about sharing what we have with the world. To be honest, I think it's what empathy is what binds us all as human beings. And so we definitely have work that we want to take. We also want to establish Trybe across the globe. We would love for there to be different groups that can exist that have the same ethos, and find a way of in a dream world. I'd love to have a Trybe Australia. I'd love to have a Trybe Scotland. I'd love to have a Trybe Wales, and actually just so that there's almost a satellite of these companies that can exist, that can support each other. And also we are, I suppose, I know this may not be a question, but sometimes a question comes up as to why not Black women as well. And actually what we've just been responding to is purely just the statistics and the urgency and need to address this stuff right now. There's definitely a future that exists where we work all different types of groups that are a part of Trybe. But we're just kind of being as responsive as we can to the demand of the work that's needed in our community.
Well, it's just wonderful to see that history of theatre taking that role is so alive and flourishing.
Thank you.
So last chance to ask Philip anything before I wrap us all up.
Hi, Philip.
Hello.
I don't think you can see my video, but I've been listening here quietly in the background, and I'm fascinated by what you do. And I just was wondering, have you considered, I'm in Perth, WA, but have you considered taking it to Ireland?
We definitely would. I mean, we would absolutely jump at the opportunity to come to Ireland and share a bit of what we do. So definitely we've gone to Poland. We were happy if we could go to Poland, we can go anywhere. So we'd definitely be interested in being able to come down.
I lived in and worked in Croydon in the past, so I have a fair understanding of the caliber of people. And I was fascinated because I just felt that this was a delayed right journey for these boys.
Mhm.
And it was a, you know, find your space, and they found their space to create their own personal passage into manhood in a creative manner.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
feel that, and I'm talking cultural, that for the young people who are first generation Irish,
Yeah.
the culture of the right journey, they so need that need to recognize their African culture through means of art and dance. And I
Yeah.
don't feel that it's being met, if I may say so, because to be in the politest way possible, and I'm Irish, we're ignorant. We don't understand. And it's something like what you're doing, like you said, when you said, I first thought it'd be a workshop and now it's a production company. And I'm thinking there is a massive need for an awful lot of young boys in Ireland.
Definitely. I would absolutely be up for a chat. Definitely. We should definitely have a conversation. We'd love to come up to the island. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, that's me just said my piece.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
the goal is we get Trybe satellites worldwide. I can see it.
Yeah, that's the dream. That's the dream.
So thank you for getting us all into that
No, pleasure. My pleasure.
into that space and onto that line, that train line. I can see it now. It was wonderful to meet you. Thank you again, Philip, for sharing that with us.
Pleasure.
And for everyone, the Create Centre has its YouTube channel that I expect you're all familiar with, and this video will appear there in the next couple of days.
Great.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well done, Philip.
Good
Great
night,
work.
then.
Thanks, everybody. Take care,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thanks for
Bye.
listening.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.